I was talking about headshots recently with my boss because this one was taken actually at the Mercantile. Shout out to John and the team for letting me and a friend come and do some photos. It's a couple years old though, my hair's a little longer, so maybe I need a new one. It was really nice, thank you. I'm actually just trying to make sure Katie's my friend after all of these events that she keeps inviting me to. Because that was a really good conversation. I'm trying to play it cool though, and not be too like upfront and ask her to be my bud. But that's what I'm saying. So I'm gonna share some of my work and some work that I feel is really close to me. But I wanted to first kind of talk about my connection to honesty and where I feel like I explore it or express it the most, which as I kept talking with Katie and just thinking about where I feel the most okay to be vulnerable or to kind of express different ideas is through writing. And I have a journalism background and a creative writing-esque background, but and I think I've just kind of hybridized the two into like what would be considered prose poetry. And I think that I've fallen into wanting to write about my own life or experiencing the lives of people around me, that closeness of like observing and questioning and kind of retaining all of what is happening both in a physical, expressive sort of way, but also in my processing as things are going on. And I hope that comes through in some of the work that you'll hear later. And I think that I started to notice that I was kind of collecting all of this in my work in college. Where I was able to, like, for the first time, kind of focus on honing a craft and just writing. And I think I get honestly, I get the most nervous when I'm sharing my work with people I'm not necessarily familiar with. Perhaps people who are not necessarily familiar or comfortable or excited by poetry in general. But I think that in those spaces of like vulnerability, in those spaces of like questioning and kind of the ambiguity of how will this be received, I find that like a little nerve-wracking, but also really exciting or thrilling, like for the chance to like share something that maybe touches someone in a way that they need at the time, whether that's to encourage or like set a fire or a spark to something that they want to do that they haven't felt that they are able to, or maybe have somebody start to think about something in a way that they haven't considered before, or to maybe just like accept that there are differences in the way that people are around us and the way that they live their lives, and that is awesome and like acceptable and like necessary for like diverse communities, diverse perspectives, and like just genuine personness. So I'm going to share some of my work and some work from poets I admire. And I really like questions, so if you have questions or thoughts or ideas or anything, as I'm reading, feel free to do whatever you want. You can clap, you can smile, you can sigh, you can leave. But I would love questions at the end or comments, or just to kind of have a discussion with you all about, or just in general about my work or the work that I'm sharing, or in general about your thoughts of honesty and poetry. January 1, 2016. My brain throbs against the cusp of my throat. You hand me water, you hold my ears and press your lips against the center of my brow. Our reflections spoon in the black blades of the ceiling fan. We are stars, constellations straddling yesterday's champagne flutes in each other's arms, wondering of withdrawal from the backs of our eyelids. And this is from Maggie Nelson's Bluettes, who someone just received. Which I'm gonna interrupt my poetry reading for. This book is just like full of like Post-it notes and scribbling, and it's one of my favorite books, and that's why I suggested it. My favorite thing in here is a grocery list that is completely stained with, I don't know what, I'm assuming coffee, put in here by my partner, who pops up in a lot of poetry as well. And it's from before he moved to Cincinnati a year and a half or so ago. And I gifted him the book because I was talking about how much I loved it, how much it meant to me, especially the author talks a lot about lovers, both past and present, and friendships and all that kind of stuff. And so to see his handwriting and to see the like different stains of like his life at the time in Chicago before moving here, and it's just like got those good folded crease lines and stuff. It just was a really beautiful thing to come across as I was deciding what to read and share today. 230. This is also a book all about loving the color blue. Holed up in the North Country for the month of May, a May which saw but 4 days of sunshine, the rest of the month was solid gray, drizzling or pouring rain, rendering everything green, rushing and verdant, in short, a nightmare. Each day I took long walks in my yellow poncho looking for blue, for anything blue. I found only tarps, pinned over stacks of firewood, a few blue recycling containers kicked over in the streets, a grayish blue mailbox here and there. I came to my dark chamber each night, empty-eyed, empty-handed, as if I had been panning fruitlessly for gold all day in a cold river. Stop working against the world, I counseled myself. Love the one you're with, love the color green. But I did not love green, nor did I want to have to love it, or pretend to love it. The most I can say is that I abided it. Goya. The most beautiful smile parted at 3 a.m. on our third ride over the Ohio. We tasted raindrops in the beam of a train's headlight, no handing down the dividing line while his back tire blubbed over and over on the asphalt. No air escaped our lungs without clouding and our faces. We shivered out laughs left over from whiskey shots and drags from blunts in the back of a bar on the leather couches that once cradled the unconscious who, in those moments, pearled as white as innocence. They were wrens who hadn't yet soared. But we sailed through the night like bottled ships made of matchsticks set on fire. And this is The Body's Question by Tracy K. Smith. I have finally become that girl in the photo you keep among your things, steadying myself at the prow of a small boat. It is always summer here, and I'm always staring into the lens of your camera, which has not yet been stolen, always with the same expression, meaning, I see your eye behind the camera's lens, meaning that in the time it takes for the tiny guillotine to open and fall shut, I will have decided I am just about ready to love you. I hide blackberries and grapes in my pussy while we build the frame of our loft bed with wood from dumpsters on 15th and Elm. You work the saw and spatter dust on the same back patio where you witnessed a woman suck a man's dick from a wicker chair right outside our bedroom window, middle of the day, like 2 p.m. You called me to ask if that was normal, and from my office, red-faced as if I could be, as if my cheeks were also full, I said, I don't know, I'm usually here. I placed the berries and grapes in small bowls as offering while you work inside with your drill, loudly away from the snow. They're within reach, but I feed you one. The creases are filled white, and I walk away proudly to continue chopping up spinach and tomato and mushrooms in the kitchen. I pour half and half and vegetable broth into the crock pot and watch it warm. I can tell how far your screw is in the wood from the squeal it makes. You say sometimes when I come, my voice drops. You say you see me raise my chin. I am thinking of pressure points and chopping up more tomatoes with Allison. We make a cucumber salad and she tells me about Jonas and the phone call on New Year's Day. She puts cayenne in the salad and tosses it with her hands. I think she really does forgive us for breaking her grandmother's juice cups now. She'll always have that story about us fucking against the kitchen island and the shards of porcelain painted sunflower smashed besides the legs of it, and I think that's worth something too. Our hair hangs heavy from the pillowed corners of Allison's old mattress, unmoved through the open door. The stove light from the kitchen finds half your face before exiting out the window to disappear into the street. The dishes collect again on the counter, casting a range of stretched shadows along the floor. Though she did them one last time before leaving for good, I guess it's fine to leave bottles in the bath now, our clothes strewn along the linoleum to spill wherever where nothing more than small hills of water on our skin be soggy swarm. We'll call ourselves a valley, river-licked. I assume in her distance she'll understand us as the sink, piled wet silverware and white teeth. A body is so strong against my punishment, or is it my mind forcing the fists throw down softer with purpose unbeknownst to me, so that I might walk this line for another decade, mostly intact? November 9th, 2016, which was a shitty day. There is apple pie crust on my kitchen floor, blood in my bed, and I've thrown 3 Perrier bottles against the wall this morning. My skin separates at the small cuts, more nicks of aggression to cover it like lashes, and I split at the seams. My blood, like dark-bodied man, spills puddles from the repetitive dotting. There is so much red on this map of America, like many other maps of America, and street corners in America, and pussies in America. And I am American. I'm just not sure how to feel about that today. Hashtag feel better. Today I wake up to news on the radio. I listen from my bed. I check Facebook and my boss's email. I'm reminded that most of the nation still hates women and people of color. Later, the news moves on to discuss space, about far off blackness, and I wish I was distant enough to be longed for, sought after, or seen as something of infinite possibility. There was a comment earlier about Northside, and if you have been to Northside or care about Northside or anything, then you've been to the Comet, maybe, if you had a good burrito. And, and I feel like a lot of my work will embody a place or a moment or the people in that place. And I still spend a decent amount of time at the Comet, but for a while I was there very often. And this is, I guess, a Comet poem, but it's called Heavenly Bodies. The cars sometimes shape themselves into flames outside the windows of the Comet. Maybe it's the lights. Like the lights and the speed of the passing buses melt into each other in my blurred vision. I'm still trying to make out the faces of the smokers from the rear wall of the showroom. What if we all melt here like the dinosaurs? Imagine the minutes unaware of asteroid like gas like glass confetti flaming in the atmosphere. I'd like to believe if I knew even a little of my last moments, I'd manage to kiss everyone in the room who I've wanted to taste, hold their faces in the soft beds of my palm and push my lips against theirs as if to prove I need nothing more than the sound of their exhale against me. But how would anyone know what to do when space isn't distant? I'd probably just grab another Pabst and retire to the basement thinking of every night I was someone else's moon. This is a very old poem called Furcula, which is the proper term for a wishbone that you snap or don't snap. Hopefully you get the good side. It's kind of like the coffee mates. Right? It's like half for somebody, one half for the other. Furcula. In the foggy shine of sweat-glazed bodies glowing in the dark, we made music with our hips. I felt bass in your lips, your tongue tasted like dusk, like bubblegum skylines dripping gold as the sun says goodnight, and I swear I heard my name in the whispers of your footsteps while they wandered towards the packed cab of a truck, downhilling the drunk to their getaway rides. I wonder of goodbye, that good night, see you later, when you're nothing but a sway, a kiss, a pipe dream plane ride full of small talk on a corner when the concert's end and dancing begins. But I know now, tomorrow's yesterday, our last night of truck hood high fives and hijinks has sunk like cave roof rafters crawling with 20-somethings dangling destinies in their rainy missteps, their pockets full of baggies, chests full of smoke, inflated on the roof counting church steeples and spitting to hear the sound. We watched elastic bodies swirl their bones loose in the brittle brick warehouse that sang out hallelujahs each time the bass line bounced. You called me young and brave and broke me into infinite wishes. I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of local musicians and non-local composers and musicians with essentially writing what could be considered lyrics or librettos or something to their work. And sometimes when I read that one, I'm like, oh, that's totally there's a musicality to it. And I don't read as much anymore, and it's kind of fun, but it's kind of terrifying. But I do get to do a lot more commission pieces, and those are really fun to kind of to set words to music, or to have somebody set your words to music, and to have that truth be both true to you and true to whatever the new form that it takes, and then again another time with whomever is receiving it, and then what truths kind of are at play together. Thoughts while lying on my back in a tent on the 4th floor of a building on 14th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 2014. I really love long titles. Last night, I didn't notice the empty wine bottles dusted over along the sole windowsill. Their shadows stretched across the carpet on your side of the attic. I've watched them inch closer to your toes all morning while you've slept, waking briefly once to reposition your arm along my waist and the warm insides of your legs against my hip. I moved a few stringy curls from your brow, resting sweetly on my shoulder, and kissed your forehead like a mother, still staring out the window. You're much shorter than anyone I'm interested in dating. We're still friends. Kathy White Wilson is a columnist and a writer and a wonderful, stunning, amazing person. And I met her as a student of hers, and I've gotten to read and perform with her a little bit. And there's so much of her work that I could share, but I just wanted to share a part of her dedication and continue reading. But for my mother and my father for teaching me to sing a blues called Truth. Swell, written after the Kavanaugh Supreme Court hearings. Staring at the 5 tomatoes I've harvested from outside my apartment into Hira's old plastic pot, wind blown from the 2nd floor fire escape, thinking about all the water Chris and I filled from the tub faucet and poured into the dirt for the fruit in my palm. At some point in the summer, I abandoned the garden, let stalks fall over with their weight dragging against the patio cement, Leaves brushed by bodies and bags of trash collected from the upstairs neighbors. I sometimes thank the sky for remembering the effort, Chris too. But today, I am fisting 5 tomatoes with a head full of men shouting and throwing their hands about until they collide into desks or a past they've since erased, or around a voice, a truth, a woman, and questioning whether or not to squeeze. Before the War by Adam Day. I was a woman before the war. We took the arms of our enemies and swung them from our crotches and lived with them there until, like ticks, they grew inward and we were the first men. But we didn't want those stolen limbs anymore, and so tried by force to give them back, hoping the fists would come alive inside women and grab hold. But when we were done, the arms only hung dumbly between our tired legs, shrinking in time, a useless door handle, a hung shadow we walk upon. Today's outfit. I guess I am trying to say I am moss covered with a white flag. There is little blood within me, but what is there is rich. If you ever need inspiration for life, you should get any of Yoko Ono's books, but Grapefruit is fantastic. Handpiece. Sit in the garden, raise one hand, extend it until it reaches a cloud. Have your friend ring a cymbal. Keep extending it until it goes out of the stratosphere. Have your friend put out a flag. One day, my daughter will be sweaty and tender like me, and I will show her the blossoms of the family tree and how pleasure is our matrilineal tradition. I don't really write a lot of poems about my family, but I try sometimes. And I don't have a bad relationship with family. I just kind of grew up in Cincinnati since I was 18, so I feel like this is more of my hometown and my family than in my original hometown in Indiana, which is a weird place. My mother hasn't any stories of mystics as I've hoped. No Creole root work to report during adolescence in Louisiana. The trees flowered at the ends of their branches as if they were the French tips of a fingernail wagging in the southern wind. Sweet matrons of the garden bursting at the end of brown limbs. Magnolia was her mother. I first learned her name in June, and I soon wished that I were there at any past point to meet her, steal a moment of her time. Instead, I borrow memories from my mother, sister, photographs still stacked in the buffet. Now at Daddy's, I learned that Dad lost her mind as mine just began firing. I think of matches and cough up smoke today. I will ask my mother about my name and the ornamental M's dividing each of her kids' first and last. A centerpiece to petals, the style stemming from its roots. Maternal pipeline, peekaboo. Michelle isn't even Michelle's real name. It's just an amendment to the inexperience of young tongues. Shanitra is too hard to say when you're one. You managed to get all the mothers you asked for and called them a different name instead, Auntie. Like Auntie A, who dressed up in a witch's costume that first Halloween and took you out when your sisters didn't want you around. You had her all to yourself that night, riding the bus for hours. The city yours, its alleyways and veiny side streets unfolding at your touch. Yes, America has failed every immigrant to enter its harbor. The dream they came for breaks like family. But here is the dream no one expected. Her hand to hold, the streetlights guiding your path, the night packed with its costumes and pretenders, and you at the center, finding something real. I found a white gift box with my daddy's name written in my mom's handwriting in the corner of the basement beneath the pile of mothballed tinsel and ornaments I made in grade school. Popsicle stick snowflakes with jingle bell centers sat spiderweb like the ceiling corners of our old house before my brother and I drug brooms through them, listening to Daddy sing Lauryn Hill over the vacuum's hum. Everything is everything. What is meant to be will be. After winter must come spring. Change, it comes eventually. Actually, I'll skip those two. Some want old wild fish in rivers untouched by pollution. Still others want to believe they can go on as they have without attrition of the land, that they can thrash and harrow, but always wake in the morning to find the lake still there, the fish consumed the night before, miraculously whole and alive in the water, a child's dream. This is my last poem, which was written for Kathy Y. Wilson in a show that she had at the West End that was basically an exhibit of her entire apartment, which is a collection of like blaxploitation and like Black power sorts of things, and was phenomenal. And she had us write about what it was called Sanctuary, and she had us write about what a sanctuary is to us. And I was thinking about what sanctuary meant to me or is to me, and I think I kept landing on a similar thing that I had written about before for a symphony poetry contest, which was like freedom and sanctuary and all of those things. I feel like I have absolutely no control over in my own social life or own world existence, but I do have within myself. And so I wrote this piece about sanctuary as like a mentality, as like a home within the self, because I really don't feel like I have a lot of control of things outwardly. And I kept coming back to if that resonates within what honesty is, and for me, and that's just like being truthful to myself and to those around me. And I was thinking that comes from just like a soul component. That if you are true to yourself and true to whatever it is that you want to do, and you can express that outwardly and kind of evoke that within the people around you, then that's a power in of itself. And to kind of be aware of that power and to be able to share that and to try and express that to people in a way that makes them feel empowered by that and to want to do that as well is what I think my whole like purpose is. And so I think I want to be vulnerable and to be honest and to share, just so other people feel like they can as well, and that whatever it is that they're sharing and experiencing is worthy of being expressed and like worthy of being, shared with other people. So yeah, thanks for letting me talk at you. I'm gonna read this last poem and then we can chat some more. A temple. Every few seconds, I move my feet from in front of the heater. It's winter again, and I still find no wonder in the snow. I've told lovers how I used to sit atop the metal grates of floor vents while my siblings took turns showering before school. I'd fall asleep as the furnace would and wake up as it kicked on again to shuffle about to whatever position didn't burn me. I've never been good at mornings. But it's evening and the lamplight makes sense above my stacked limbs and bald wind, my husband asleep in bed above me, a metronome of air. The windows are drafty here and they woo at me often. I pretend I'm not haunted and shift a bit in the blanket of shirts I've layered throughout the day. My hand rests beneath my tit to support my slump. I am searching for warmth the way houseplants do, quietly bending toward the beating heat. The snow is quiet too, softly pelting the patio furniture discarded by old tenants and passerbys. It tries to hide the trashy view from our ground floor window. Tomorrow it will melt. I once tried to read about the sun on a road trip, foam screen reflecting in the windshield. I learned that worship is seldom without sacrifice, and then directed the air ducts to warm my feet. Sometimes I say I'm bone cold because I believe myself built of pearls. Some dark tomb held me in a stack of muddied rocks before I, kneeling, folding furiously at my hips until some waving light was told I am not the licking sea, just river-fucked freedom. Tonight, I am reading about a man who thinks he loves a man and also a woman, but maybe loves no one at all, not even his country. I relearn the word articulate and pull the heater closer as if readying myself to bloom. I drink from my water glass and imagine there is already a puddle on the patio. I rename it an ocean and try to see across to the reference Paris alleyways and bedrooms, all contemplating home and irony, how iron at some previous point was fluid too, molten but nonetheless malleable. Whoever taught us to see did not equip us with discernment. We did. This is to say, reserve is the shape I'll take, a sanctuary of the self to the self, and in the morning, I'll wake sour-mouthed with rationed speech, contact settling on the bright white still outside my window, one leg jutting around the blanket to balance my body heat, the other wrapped along his, knowing that only in the blackest of my being, in my shut eyelids, am I reminded that I truly am. Thanks. I don't know what happens with questions afterwards. This is my first creative morning. Or if you have no questions, that's fine too. What's up?
I'm not super familiar with poetry at all, but I am interested in knowing how you allow your vulnerability and honesty to come out. Do you just kind of tap into it? Do you have to do something to channel it? Or do you just let it be?
I think I start with the fuck it attitude. Just like, I care about a thing a lot and I want to like capture it and keep it in a place, so I just try to like let it just come out and flow with it. And I think sharing it always feels the most vulnerable. Writing it is just with me, it's just mine then, but to share it feels a little bit more like work. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah. What's up?
Can you talk a little bit about your writing process and just what that looks like?
Sure. I don't know if my writing process is similar to a lot of other folks. I mostly just I think a lot before I actually write something down. I try to like wander through. I do like this I don't know if this is a real process, but I'm not gonna say that it is. I do this overwhelming thing where I go, when I'm thinking about a thing that I really want to write, I will go experience a lot of other people's art. So I'll go to museums, I'll go watch a lot of films, or like go see a film in a theater, or absorb a lot of other people's like writing, and then I will take all of that chaos, I guess, and kind of like filter my thought through a lot of that, a lot of the different creative elements that I just like kind of ran into. And maybe it's just written at one time, maybe it's written over the course of a couple of months, maybe it's written months after or years after a thing has happened. There's a lot of yous in the poetry, but they are oftentimes very different yous, very different individuals from 20. I think all of the things that I shared today are from like 2013 up until now, probably. The most recent poem being the Kavanaugh poem. Yeah.
As we're talking about honesty today, a lot of the poems that you read were very honest. Is there a line for you between honesty and too personal, or is that not something that crosses your mind?
Yeah, I don't. We were talking about this. I think too personal is a subjective line for people, right? I think for me, I mean, there's definitely poems that I did not share today that might have been more divulgent for somebody, like the you in the poem or the person in the poem. I don't want to talk about them in certain atmospheres, especially if I'm reading in Cincinnati. But I don't know that there's a line that feels. No, I feel like it's fine to share whatever I'm comfortable with writing and sharing. I feel fine to express. I think poetry for me was always like almost like diary entries, almost like confessional sorts of things. So I don't know that I have a huge line. I get picky about what I will share and read in front of groups. Like I don't always read the Barry poems in front of groups, but I figure why not? Why not? Because like I'm a perv and that's fine. I can be a professional and a perv. It's cool. I think it's nice for people to know that. I'm a whole human outside of my just like professional presenting life. And I think that, certain things are like intimate to a certain relationship or person or whatever, but also it's like, it's cool. Maybe it's not, I don't know. Yeah.
So I appreciate you being very honest about your feelings in your work and your poetry. And I was taking notes here, and I had to paraphrase what you were saying, because I think some of those words that you said, I don't think I've ever written them down before in my life. And I'm kind of worried that...
Which words? Say the one that's most uncomfortable. I'm just going to have to say.
And of course, I had all these nice visions, of course, related to that. But I was worried,
Thank you for sharing.
I'm just worried that when I'm dead and gone, my children and grandchildren will pick up my notebook and they'll say, "Oh, Grandpa was really strange here."
Grandpa was a human. I think that's what...
I was just wondering, do you feel like you were always this open, this honest when you were 10, 15 years old? Or this kind of, did you have personal experiences that encourage you to be more open? Like, what's the origin story of your honesty? Because I find it really refreshing, and I agree with everything you say, especially about immigration, and you mentioned a little bit about immigrants, because I think this country belongs to the world. Somebody shared on Facebook this rant on a particular TV station about who are these people coming in this caravan, and they have no right to be here. And I think back 300-400 years ago, I don't think my ancestors, my first ancestor came over in 1637 and owned a particular slave ship that is known. I thought I had nothing to do with that. I thought they came over in the 1880s or something. My daughter found out otherwise. But you just find this country should belong to the world, and not, like, we're not entitled to say, this is my country and you're not allowed to come in, because we came in under strange circumstances. I don't think the Native Americans really brewed a pot of tea for us and welcomed us with open arms.
Sure.
So, but
It seems like you have a couple of questions, or at least like thought, and I appreciate you sharing all of it.
It's just my rant.
No, I love it. I appreciate it, and you're being honest in this space with us, which I really like. And some of the work about like either race, immigration, or like social political sorts of things, some of it is my work, and some of it is shared from like other people of color who are immigrants, whose family are immigrants and stuff like that. And I feel like it's important to share in a space like this, because there are so many different people and perspectives and ideas and like backgrounds that we come from, that I think it's important to like make sure these other narratives are accounted for, so that people are archiving it and like writing it, and that it is also then shared, because I don't know that you would have picked up Fatima's book ever, but I'm glad to be able to share if they come for us with this room as well. And where did my comfort with being vulnerable and open come from? I think it came from suppression of like feelings. Like when I was younger, I wasn't necessarily allowed to feel feelings. It was just like, deal with it, move on. And I still kind of had that attitude about like process it and keep moving. Like I don't really want anything to feel like a limit or a boundary for me. But I think that recognizing how suffocated some of my emotionality and feelings were, and then being a kind of shitty human up until like 18 or so, and still kind of being shitty, and then realizing it and growing from it. I'm still not perfect, right? But like I think it's just like I want to whatever my being is, I want to be able to express it and like have someone hold me accountable, and myself accountable for some of that, and then to grow from that. Because I think if there's no progress in your life, if there's no openness of like receiving and giving, then I feel like you're just like stagnant, and that seems pretty boring to me. Yeah.
Is it possible to get your reading list today posted?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can share that. Thanks for asking. Thanks. Mm.
So yeah, you know, I'm sure those weren't all first drafts, though some might have been. But like, yeah, how do you edit and maintain the
Friends.
what you're doing?
Friends and editors, yeah. Like, I don't have like a real editor, but I'll share. Like, I have contemporary poets that I like to, some of them in the room, that I like to share my work with, and like, you know, have some sort of feedback about it. Some of them are like, I just wrote this once, and maybe this is a poem, and I'm just going to commit to the fact that it is and read it like it is. But I think, yeah, sharing your work with people, both poets and or like writers and non-writers, just like how does a regular human that is an engineer or just like a barista interpret what this is? Like, I think, and all the jobs in between that and around that. I think having people look at it, like people that you trust, people that like feel comfortable with you, and like honest about your work, and will give you a real response. I think that can be helpful, or that has been helpful. Yeah.
I just want to say I really love your voice, and if you had a podcast, I would listen to it.
Thank you.
I really loved the line about kind of the black hole and wishing that you could have. Could you, do you remember when you came up with that line, and could you maybe read that little section again?
Yeah. Just a second. Just a lot of papers over here. Ugh. Not this one. So I feel like I've combined the poem hashtag feel better and the November 9th poem, which is the day that Trump was elected, whatever. So I've combined those as like one entire poem. So sometimes things evolve also over time. They become different things or a part of a new thing. So I think it was like around that same era, and it just like, I'd been listening to a lot of NPR, and there was like all these stories about like certain space elements and themes, and maybe I was like reading and watching stuff about the sky. And I was also hearing a lot of this like really negative still commentary about like Black people, about people of color, about like Indigenous people, about like all these really, it was like at the big, like it's never a beginning, but it was like during a surge of a lot of that kind of coming in that like felt like it hadn't been around for a while, or like that people could be better, or we're doing better, or whatever. And I feel like, so I was hearing a lot of like stuff about space and about things in the sky. And I was also, I think I wrote it around the same time that I wrote the comet poem also, which has the comet and the actual physical location or whatever. I'm gonna stop rambling about that and just read the line like you asked for. Later, the news moves to discuss space, about far off blackness, and I wish I was distant enough to be longed for, sought after, seen as something of infinite possibility. So I feel like a lot of those lines about space are said, but if you think about blackness and to be Black, and to consider like what is also being shared in the same platform, in the same radio station, and like news stories that are happening, and for it to be almost like exact opposites of like people's perspective of like, let us seek and go forge on and learn all this stuff about this whole thing that we don't know much about at all, but here's an actual physical people that are here that have had X, Y, and Z experience here, and the relationship that people have with that about not caring, or like not having an interest even, or not thinking that they are capable of anything. I don't know. So I think I was just playing with those two things. Yeah.
What did it feel like to be a poet, an artist, working for City Hall?
I wrote a lot of emails during that time, so I feel like I didn't write a lot of new things, that I was proud of during that time. And I was there for 4 years, and it was a wonderful job. I really loved my job. I loved the people that I worked for, and I'm not just saying that. But I mean, creatively, I think it was somewhat stifling, honestly, because there's just like a process that things have to go by, and it doesn't seem like you can go outside of those lines a lot. So I think that felt a little bit stifling for me. But where possible, I tried to do some sort of creative things. Like I got to the poet laureate position is one that I helped to create. So the fact that there is a Cincinnati poet laureate, that was something that I got to bring into that space, or bring it in, because it existed before years ago. And like some of the writing that I did or something, I could make it a little bit more interesting or note certain things. But also felt like there is not a intended censorship, but I feel like I didn't want to write about some of the people or the working environments that I was in, because it just didn't feel safe to do so. If that makes sense.
So I wanted to ask you a question about your process around sharing your truth and honesty and using poetry as your medium to do that. And I'm going to kind of see if I can like put all these different thoughts together in my head to come up with this question that I want to ask. But this morning as I was like getting ready, I heard a StoryCorps story about this kid who at like, 11 or 12, or maybe even younger, like realized that, came out as transgender and just owned it in this way that was so like powerful and strong. And I was so struck by having that relationship with honesty and that clarity around it at that young age, And I think for all of us, and at least speaking for myself, that relationship with honesty is, it's kind of like a spectrum and it's a struggle, right? To really like own who we are and know how to share that with the world, like when we feel like we have something to share. And I'm wondering for you, did you always know that it was like poetry that was how you wanted to share your truth and put it out there? Was that like a kind of a no-brainer, easy thing you've just always done your whole life, or was it a challenge for you to kind of step over that place and start to put yourself out there in a way that felt more vulnerable and public, I guess maybe is the word. Yeah. I don't know if there's a question in there, but kind of.
No, that's great. I was talking to you about this, and you might have asked a similar question, Katie, you. I was saying, I think I started hanging out in like queerer and creative spaces and started to feel more comfortable expressing myself in whatever way felt good or felt like. And I guess in creative spaces and in queer spaces, I've always felt most comfortable just like around other people who were also evoking their own, like, I will be myself, and it is okay to be yourself, even if your thing is not my thing, but like, just like be out and be like, explore it, I guess. I felt like, and I think I started being in those spaces when I got into college, I think. So like around like 18, 19 or whatever. I was just around more poets or more like art inclined folks, and then within that same world, just a lot of like queer folks. And I guess I identify as queer. I have a husband, but there's a lot of other things going on too. But I identify as queer, and I feel like as soon as I became a part of those spaces and continue to be a part of those spaces, that I felt more comfortable being able to express and explore what things I may be into or want to try or whatever. So yeah, I think I answered it. I actually, I cut out 2 things because I didn't want to go too long, and I have, and that I was going to read, and it was from Maggie Nelson's Argonauts, which is all about that we should have given that book, but it's not a book of poetry, but it's all about queer family life, because Maggie and her partner is trans, and they have children together, and there's a section about heteronormativity and this questioning about that, and I wish I didn't cut it out now. I'm sad that I did that. and a trans poem that a poem featuring a trans woman who is also a sex worker on my street, and I wish I would have read them now. But I can add those to the reading list. Okay, sorry. I think you want to talk. Okay, thanks.